I worked 15 years as an orderly at the psychiatric ward of a state hospital. It's all closed up now. But I remember what I witnessed here. It wasn't like most hospitals I had worked at. It was a place where the line between reality and madness blurs, and the shadows have a life of their own. The patients here, they saw things, felt things, in ways no one else could. At first, I thought it was just from their illness, but now I'm not so sure. In that state with the anchor that holds one bound to the physical world is removed, the most horrific possibilities of the mind are set free to terrorize in a perception as real as anything. Every night, when the halls grew quiet and the rest of the staff had left, that's when the real horrors began. The patients would tell me their stories about the things that drove them here. I've seen the fear in their eyes. Are their senses tuned into realities beyond our own? Maybe, just maybe, they're seeing something real. Welcome to the Psych Ward. Our first story involves a 27-year-old male software programmer who was accused of a horrific crime, but whose mental state was too far gone from psychosis to hold him criminally accountable. Yet, he did not escape punishment. Quite the contrary. The prison of his mind is a crueler place than any cell one could find in the waking world. But you can hear it now in his own words.
When I was a kid, I used to lie in bed at night, trapped in that strange, heavy sleepiness. The kind where your body feels like it's weighed down by stone, and even breathing feels like work. My limbs refused to move, and my eyes wouldn't open all the way. I didn't think anything of it at first. I figured this was just what falling asleep's supposed to feel like. Then one night, the spider came. It always started the same way. A faint rustling sound, barely there, like dry paper brushing together. It came from the far corner of my room, where the carpet met the wall. I'd hear it, and my heart would skip a beat, but I couldn't move. I'd lie there, my body limp, as my mind screamed for me to get up, turn on the light, or call for my parents. But I couldn't. All I could do was listen as the sound grew louder, closer, and then I'd see it. The carpet would shift slightly, as though something was wriggling beneath it. I'd feel a cold dread settle in my stomach, even before the spider's spindly legs emerged. First one, then two, then all 8 of them, so thin they looked like black needles. Its body was bulbous and oily, a dull sheen catching the faint glow of my nightlight. It would crawl toward my bed, slowly, deliberately, its tiny legs making soft scratching noises against the floor. I'd hold my breath as it climbed up the blankets. My chest would feel tight. My pulse would race. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. It always crawled up to my ear. The first time, I didn't hear anything. It just lingered there, its presence unbearable. I think I passed out from sheer exhaustion, because the next thing I knew, it was morning. I told my parents about the spider right away. They didn't believe me. Dreams can feel real sometimes, my mom said, shaking her head, but it's just your imagination. Still, she vacuumed my room, lifting the corners of the carpet to show me that there was nothing underneath. My dad sprayed some smelly chemical around the corners of the rug, muttering something about nightmares and too much TV. I felt a little better. But that night the spider came back. It made the same trek as before, stopping just in front of my ear. At first its voice was garbled, like the faint buzz of a broken radio. I didn't understand it, but I knew the sound came from the spider. It perched by my ear, its piping little whispers too faint to make sense of, but they lingered with me. They felt wrong, like hearing something you weren't meant to hear. I told my parents again. I begged them to believe me. My mom rolled her eyes. My dad's patience wore thin. The vacuum came out one last time, followed by a sharp, "Enough of this nonsense." After that, I stopped telling them. But the spider didn't stop. Every night, the paralysis would hit me like a wave, and I'd hear the familiar rustling from the corner of the room. The spider would emerge, climb to my ear, and whisper its strange, tinny words. Over time, the voice became clearer. At first it said little things. "They never wanted you," or "You're alone here." Simple sentences that gnawed at the back of my mind even after I woke up. I tried to ignore it, but every night it returned. And every night its voice became clearer, its words darker. "I know what you really want. The knives in the kitchen are sharp." The spider told me about the matches under the sink, about the pills my mom kept in the bathroom cabinet. I didn't want to listen, but I couldn't help it. It whispered to me until I fell into a restless sleep. I tried everything to get rid of it. I stayed up late, keeping every light in my room on. But eventually, sleep always found me. And when it did, so did the spider. One night, when I was about 10, I managed to ask it a question. I still don't know where I found the courage to speak, but as it perched near my ear, whispering its dark thoughts, I forced my lips to move. "Why do you keep talking to me?" I croaked. The spider froze, its legs brushed my cheek softly, like fingers. Its voice, clearer than ever, hissed back. "Because you want me to." I didn't sleep at all after that. Years passed, and the spider's visits became less frequent, maybe once a month, then once every few months. By the time I hit my teens, I hadn't seen it for over a year. I convinced myself it had been some kind of recurring nightmare. I moved out after high school, went to college, got a job, and forgot all about the spider. Until tonight. I'm 28 now, and I live alone in a tiny overpriced apartment. I don't know what brought it back. Maybe stress. Maybe something I ate. Or maybe it was waiting for the right moment. But tonight, as I was drifting off to sleep, the heaviness returned. It felt the same as when I was a kid. My limbs went limp. My chest grew tight. My mind was awake, but my body refused to listen. And then I heard it, the rustling sound from the corner of the room. "No," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Not again." The spider emerged. Its legs looked longer now, its body more bloated, its eyes more numerous, tiny reflections staring at me in the darkness. My heart raced as it climbed onto my bed, the faint scratching of its legs against the sheets sending chills down my spine. It perched by my ear, and its voice, clear and sharp, whispered, "Do you know what happened to them?" My breath caught in my throat. "Who?" I managed to ask. "Your parents," The spider's voice was almost mocking, like it was smiling. I felt sick. "They didn't listen," it said softly. I tried to move, to scream, to do anything, but I couldn't. The spider just lingered there, its words burning into my mind. When the paralysis passed, I grabbed my phone with trembling hands and called my mom. No answer. I called my dad. Nothing. My stomach churned as I searched their names online, and there it was. A double obituary. My parents had died a week ago. A tragic fire, the article said. They'd been found together in their bedroom, long after it was too late. The spider's voice echoed in my mind. They didn't listen. My apartment feels cold now, the silence deafening. I haven't seen the spider since last night, but I can feel it watching me. I don't know what it wants or why it came back, but I know one thing. It's not done with me. And tonight, I'm going to have to listen.
You may have guessed the patient's crime. He was so disassociative, he still believed himself in his apartment and not in a hospital. And no matter the medication we administered, the spider continued to return every night. I do not know what became of him. He was still with us and transferred when the hospital closed. Our second story does have a better outcome. A 22-year-old male college student. He was brought to us in a state of agitation brought on by grief and depression. He suffered from having a severe psychotic break, triggering an episode of entomophilia, a disturbing attraction for insects. I now relate his story in his own words.
When I was a kid, Grandpa was my hero, though he really shouldn't have been. He was crude, loud, and defiant. My parents tried to raise me to be polite, God-fearing, and respectful of authority, but Grandpa, well, he believed none of that mattered. He and Grandma divorced a long time ago. Actually, I find it amazing that they ever were married in the first place. Grandma was a God-fearing woman who went to church every Sunday, but Grandpa, he was something else. God's a made-up boogeyman to keep idiots in line, he liked to say, a cigarette dangling from his lips, a glass of whiskey in his hand. You want real freedom? Smoke, drink, say what you damn well please, and never get tied down. Grandpa was determined to pass those values down to me. Thanks to him, I had my first cigarette and taste of booze long before any of my friends. He handed me inappropriate magazines and made crude jokes that went way over my head. If I had it my way, when I die, I'm coming back as a cockroach, he said more than once. That's the life, eating trash, no responsibilities, and plenty of breeding without commitment. I didn't fully understand what he meant by breeding without commitment, but I knew it was inappropriate because it always made Mom turn red. Despite his influence, my parents let me spend time with him. He's family, they'd say with a shrug. Maybe you'll be a good influence on him. But even back then, I knew that was hopeless. It was years later, on one of those lazy Saturday afternoons, that I found Grandpa lying on the floor of his living room, convulsing in a fit. His body rigid as a board. I didn't know what to do except scream for help. He died later that day in the hospital. At the funeral, my parents wept. I just stood there, numb, hearing his voice echo in my head. When I die, I'm coming back as a cockroach. I tried to get the thought out of my mind, but the words lingered. A few months passed, and life returned to normal, or so I thought. One night, I was sitting in my apartment eating dinner when I spotted a fat cockroach scuttling across the floor. I grabbed my shoe, ready to squash it, when it spoke. "Give. Food. Edgar." I froze, unable to believe what I just heard. The roach stopped moving, its antennae twitching wildly. "Food. Now." The voice was small and tinny, but unmistakably Grandpa's. My hands trembled as I lowered the shoe. "Food," it demanded, clacking its mandibles impatiently. I couldn't believe what I was hearing or seeing, but against all reason, I let the cockroach stay. I didn't know what else to do. I left garbage out for him to eat, and even kept the TV on at night for his favorite shows. As strange as it was, things weren't so bad at first. Grandpa was content to sit on the armrest while we watched late-night movies together. He wasn't quite himself. His voice was slurred, his thoughts fragmented. I wasn't surprised. A cockroach's brain is about the size of a grain of rice. He slept in the crevices under the couch during the day, emerging only when the apartment dimmed, and I sat down for dinner. His movements were erratic, driven by some strange instinct. He scuttled across the floor with no purpose, pausing suddenly as if confused, before continuing in unpredictable, dizzy patterns. "What are you doing?" I asked once, unable to look away from his mindless wandering. "Move. Must move," he said absently. "Don't know why. Just move." It was horrifying, watching him reduced to this pitiful state. A creature driven by meaningless impulses. He had no goals, no joy, just endless, compulsive motion. And food. Always food. "Trash!" he screeched one night, climbing onto the counter and knocking over an empty bag of chips. "Trash! Trash!" The sound grated on my nerves. He just twitched his antennae and resumed scuttling. Then the others came. It started with just a few cockroaches. Thin, fast ones darting along the baseboards. But after a few weeks, they were everywhere, crawling out from behind the fridge, under the sink, and through cracks in the floor. Every single one of them spoke in Grandpa's stunted voice, like they all shared a part of Gramps' soul. Food. TV. Trash. They filled my apartment, their shiny brown bodies scuttling over every surface. The floor was slick with roach droppings. I stopped letting people come over, afraid they'd see the infestation, or worse, hear the voices. At night, I lay awake, listening to the endless rustles and skittering. The sound of countless tiny legs constantly moving across the walls and ceiling. One day, I accidentally stepped on one of them. The scream was like nothing I'd ever heard, a high-pitched, agonized shriek that echoed through the entire apartment. But that wasn't the worst part. Every single cockroach screamed at the same time, as if they all shared the same death. I stumbled back, horrified, as the swarm writhed and convulsed. "Hurt! Kill!" they shrieked, followed by a stream of obscenities. "It was an accident," I stammered back at them. The cockroaches eventually calmed down, but I couldn't get the memory of that collective scream out of my head. Then came the day of the spider. It started with the screams, hundreds of cockroaches shrieking in unison, louder than ever before. I clapped my hands over my ears, desperate to block out the sound. "Help! Hurt!" they wailed. "Help!" I stumbled through the apartment, searching for the source of their panic. The swarm surged toward the corner of the room, their bodies forming a writhing mass. My stomach churned as I pushed past them. There, in the corner, I saw it. A small cockroach, trapped in a spider's web, its legs thrashing weakly. The spider, a bloated, hairy monstrosity, had already sunk its fangs into the roach's body and was in the middle of sucking the insides of its prey dry. The cockroach's voice was faint, but still recognizable. "Help! Edgar, help!" The other cockroaches wailed, their screams piercing my skull. I was frozen in terror. It was too late. I watched in horror as the spider sucked the life out of it, its body shriveling into an empty husk. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. The grotesque sight held me captive. This was Grandpa's existence now, an endless cycle of scuttling, feeding, and dying in a world of filth and predators. What a terrible, pointless existence. I was still contemplating when I heard the front door open, the landlord appearing unannounced. "This is disgusting," he shouted, gagging as he looked around the trashed apartment. "You've turned this place into a dump." "I can explain," I said, though I knew I couldn't. He didn't listen. "I'm calling an exterminator. This ends today." "No," I begged, panic clawing at my chest. "You can't." But there was nothing I could do or say. I tried to warn all the grandpas of the danger, that they should run for their lives, but it was hopeless. They couldn't understand me. The exterminator arrived only a few hours later with tanks of poison and sprays that filled the air with a sickly chemical stench. I tried to physically stop them, but that's when the police showed up and took me into custody. As they led me away, the exterminators began their work. The screams started almost immediately. Hundreds of grandpas, all shrieking in unison, their voices blending into a deafening chorus of agony. "Hurt. Hurt. Why? Edgar, why?" I sobbed, covering my ears. The police looked at me sternly as they placed me in the police cruiser. "What's wrong with you?" I couldn't answer. The screams were too loud, too overwhelming. By the time it was over, the apartment was silent. And that is how I ended up in the psych ward. The doctors say I had a breakdown, but I know the truth. Grandpa's still with me. I saw him just a few minutes ago, scurrying across the floor, his antennae twitching frantically. "TV," he demanded. "TV on." It's insisting that I take care of it again. And I will. Because family is family. Even when they've got 6 legs.
The patient received treatment, a combination of antipsychotics and intense therapy. The regimen resulted in an improvement in his condition, and after 8 weeks, he was released. I do not believe, however, that he ever gave up the idea that his grandpa was still alive, crawling about somewhere. Our third story involves a 41-year-old male patient who was brought in a little after Newton time. He was suffering from extreme agitation and was in a disassociated state. It took quite a while, but with the help of the right sedatives, his condition improved to the point that he was conversive. That night, he told me his story. I relate it here now in his own words.
I had a high-stress career in the finance sector, and it was taking a toll on my emotional health. I initially tried to deal with it with medications, but it was not enough. I eventually realized that I needed to get away occasionally into the woods, as far from civilization as I could. So hiking became my passion, and I got away as often as I could to the most isolated parts of New England that I could find. It was then that I was hiking in northern Maine on a fine summer day, close to the Canadian border in an area more remote and wild than any I had encountered before. I'd been hiking for hours, the dense forest seeming to close in around me with every step. The trees grew taller and closer, their branches tangling overhead to block out most of the sunlight. I began to see spiderwebs everywhere, big masses of them. I was starting to think about turning around when I heard a scream. I called out in response and moved in the general direction of the voice. Then I saw it. A massive spider web stretching between two trees, glistening with dew, and caught in its center, a woman. She was young, with long blonde hair and a blue dress that seemed to glow in the dim light. She struggled in desperation against the sticky silk bonds. The whole scene was horrific. My skin crawled at the sight of this monstrous web, but her pleading gaze spurred me into action. I approached slowly, seeing that the tangled mass was enormous, the strands as thick as my finger. I drew my knife and began to carefully cut her free. It wasn't easy. The web was sticky and clung to my blade, but finally I managed to loosen enough strands to free her. She hugged me in gratitude, but said nothing, apparently too exhausted and traumatized to speak. I brought her water, but she just shook her head. Instead, she seemed more interested in eagerly expressing gratitude for her rescue. She pressed her firm body against mine and brushed her supple lips across my face. She was stunningly beautiful. I could feel her seductive warmth surrounding me with her embrace. A sultry relaxation overcame me, and awash in a sea of pleasure amidst my own fatigue, I drifted off to sleep. When I woke, I was paralyzed. I was still in the tent, but I couldn't move. The woman was standing over me, smiling, and she wasn't alone. The tent was filled with spiders, their bodies hairy and huge. Then the spiders began to crawl all over me, their legs tickling my skin. I screamed, but my voice was barely a whisper. The woman's eyes gleamed in an unnatural light. Then she spoke, but it was not the voice of a woman, and though the words were unfamiliar, they were full of bad intent. I kept struggling but could not escape this nightmare, and then everything went black again. When I woke next, I was in a hospital bed. Strapped down, a doctor was leaning over me, looking concerned. I tried to speak, but my voice was hoarse. The doctor anticipated my question. "You were found in the woods, in your tent," he said. "You had quite a few bug bites. We think you had an allergic reaction." I shook my head, trying to clear it. It was a nightmare, I told myself. But as I looked around the sterile room, I knew it wasn't over.
The staff suspected that the patient had a bad reaction to his medication, exacerbated by an allergic reaction to insect bites, perhaps. But the patient persisted to believe his fantastic encounter was real, and continued to suffer from spider hallucinations for as long as I remember him being there. The thing is, it's not the first time I have heard strange stories of huge spiders in the remote areas of northern Maine. Thank you for listening. If you found them interesting, consider liking and subscribing. It will help motivate me to do my best to bring you more tales from the Psych Ward.